You think you're so special, don't you, Marcus? Mr. Whitmore's voice dripped with contempt as he slammed a thick test paper onto the boy's desk. Let me tell you something, kids like you don't belong in my advanced class. Marcus looked up, his young face steady despite the trembling in his hands. I earned my place here, sir. I passed every test you gave. Earned? The teacher's laugh echoed through the silent classroom. We'll see about that. This exam will prove what I've always known. You're nothing but a charity case who got lucky. He leaned closer, his breath hot with anger. 20 questions. University-level mathematics. You have 2 hours. When you fail, and you will fail, you'll be removed from this school permanently. What Mr. Whitmore didn't know was that this 11-year-old boy carried a secret that would shake the very foundation of his arrogance. A secret that would expose not just a teacher's cruelty, but an entire system's failure. Dear viewer, I humbly request you to watch or listen till the end and rate this story out of 10. Your rating will help me to give you better stories in next videos. If you are watching my story for the first time, subscribe this channel and press the bell icon now not to miss the notifications of my daily published new stories. Thank you, and let's dive into the full story. The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of Prestwick Academy, casting long shadows across the polished marble floors. This wasn't just any school, it was the school where the children of senators, CEOs, and old money families learned to maintain their place at the top of society's hierarchy. The tuition alone could buy a house in most neighborhoods, and everyone who walked these halls knew it. Marcus Henderson was different. His sneakers squeaked against the expensive flooring, a sound that seemed to announce his presence like an alarm. While other students carried designer backpacks, his was a simple black one his grandmother had bought from a discount store. While they discussed their weekend trips to Paris or their family's vacation homes, Marcus had spent his Saturday helping his grandmother clean houses in the wealthy neighborhood surrounding the school. He was here on a full scholarship, a fact that Mr. Gerald Whitmore never let him forget. Late again, Mr. Henderson. The voice stopped Marcus in his tracks just as he reached his classroom door. Mr. Whitmore stood in the hallway, his considerable bulk blocking the entrance, arms crossed over his chest. At 58, he had been teaching at Prestwick for 30 years, and in his mind, he had earned the right to run his classroom, and judge his students, however he saw fit. I'm not late, sir. The bell hasn't rung yet, Marcus replied quietly, checking his watch. He had 3 minutes to spare. Don't talk back to me, boy. The word hung in the air like a slap. Several students passing by slowed down, sensing drama. When I say you're late, you're late. That attitude is exactly why students like you struggle to fit in here. You lack respect for authority. Marcus felt his face grow hot, but he kept his voice steady. I apologize if I seem disrespectful, Mr. Whitmore. That wasn't my intention. The teacher's eyes narrowed. For 6 months, he had been trying to provoke this child, to make him snap, to give him a legitimate reason to recommend his expulsion. But Marcus remained calm, polite, and infuriatingly brilliant. Despite every impossible assignment, every unfair grade, every public humiliation, the boy continued to excel. Get inside, Mr. Whitmore finally growled. And stay after class. We need to discuss your future here at Prestwick. The classroom fell silent as Marcus took his seat in the back corner, the seat Mr. Whitmore had assigned him on his first day, far from the other students. The message was clear: you don't belong with them. Sarah Chen, one of the few students who occasionally spoke to Marcus, leaned over and whispered, "What's his problem with you?" Marcus just shook his head. He had asked himself the same question 1,000 times. From his very first day, Mr. Whitmore had singled him out. Every answer Marcus gave was scrutinized twice as hard. Every assignment was graded more harshly. When Marcus scored perfectly on tests, Mr. Whitmore accused him of cheating and made him retake them under his watchful eye, only for Marcus to score perfectly again. Today, Mr. Whitmore announced, striding to the front of the classroom, "We're going to discuss the upcoming semester final examination. This test will account for 40% of your grade and will determine whether you advance to the next level or repeat this course. He paused, his gaze sweeping across the room before landing on Marcus. A cold smile played at his lips. For most of you, this will be a standard comprehensive exam covering the material we've studied this year. However, I believe in challenging my students according to their supposed abilities. The emphasis on supposed wasn't lost on anyone. Mr. Henderson has consistently demonstrated what some might call exceptional performance in this class, Mr. Whitmore continued, pacing slowly. He's scored highly on every test, completed every assignment with what appears to be ease. Some might even call him gifted. Marcus felt every eye in the room turn toward him. His stomach tightened. Therefore, I've decided that Mr. Henderson will take a different examination. One that truly tests whether his success has been legitimate or merely the result of lowered standards and charitable grading from his previous schools. That's not fair. Sarah blurted out before she could stop herself. Mr. Whitmore's head snapped toward her. Ms. Chen, do you presume to tell me how to run my classroom? Perhaps you'd like to join Mr. Henderson in this special assessment. Sarah shrank back in her seat, and Marcus caught her eye, shaking his head slightly. Don't make it worse, his expression said. He had learned that speaking up only brought more attention, more scrutiny, more punishment. As I was saying, the teacher continued, Mr. Henderson will receive an examination tailored to his level. University-level questions. Advanced calculus, theoretical mathematics, complex problem-solving that even graduate students find challenging. If he's truly as brilliant as his test scores suggest, this should be no problem for him. If not. He shrugged. Well, then we'll know the truth, won't we? The bell rang, and students began filing out. Marcus remained seated, as instructed. When the room was empty, Mr. Whitmore approached his desk, dropping a thick packet of papers in front of him. This is a sample of what you'll face. Take it home. Study it. Not that it will help. Marcus stared at the papers. The equations swam before his eyes, complex, advanced, far beyond anything they had covered in class. This wasn't just difficult. This was impossible. This was designed for him to fail. Why? The word escaped before Marcus could stop it. Why do you hate me so much? What did I ever do to you? For a moment, something flickered across Mr. Whitmore's face, something that might have been discomfort or even shame. But it vanished quickly, replaced by cold certainty. I don't hate you, Marcus. I'm actually trying to help you. His voice was almost gentle, which somehow made it worse. You see, this school, this life, these opportunities, they're not meant for everyone. Better you learn that now, at 11, than waste years pursuing dreams that will never materialize. I'm doing you a favor by showing you the truth, you don't belong here. You never will. Marcus walked home slowly that afternoon, the weight of the practice exam in his backpack feeling heavier than it should. The autumn air was crisp, and the leaves crunched under his feet as he made his way through neighborhoods that grew progressively less affluent with each block. He lived with his grandmother, Dorothy Henderson, in a small two-bedroom apartment on the east side of town. She had raised him since he was 3, after his mother died and his father, well, Marcus tried not to think about his father. The man had left before Marcus could even remember his face. Baby, you're home. His grandmother's voice rang out as he opened the door. At 72, Dorothy Henderson was a force of nature. She worked 3 jobs, cleaning houses during the day, clerking at a convenience store in the evenings, and taking in alterations and sewing on weekends. Everything she did, every dollar she earned, was for Marcus. How was school? She asked, studying his face with the intuition of someone who had raised a child through every joy and heartbreak. Fine, Marcus said automatically, then stopped. He had never lied to his grandmother, and he wouldn't start now. Actually, Grandma, it wasn't fine. He told her everything, about Mr. Whitmore's announcement, the impossible exam, the public humiliation. As he spoke, he watched his grandmother's face transform. Her jaw tightened, her eyes flashed with an anger he rarely saw. "That man has no right," she began, but Marcus interrupted. "Please don't call the school, Grandma. It'll just make things worse. He'll say I can't handle the pressure, that I'm not mature enough for this level, that you're interfering. It'll give him exactly what he wants." Dorothy sat down heavily in her worn armchair, the one she'd reupholstered herself 3 times over the years. "Marcus, baby, this isn't right. This is discrimination. This is the way it is," Marcus finished quietly. "You always told me that I'd have to work twice as hard to get half as far. Well, maybe I need to work 4 times as hard." "You shouldn't have to," his grandmother whispered, tears forming in her eyes. "You're 11 years old. You should be worrying about friends and games and being a child, not fighting against a grown man who's supposed to be teaching you." Marcus pulled out the practice exam and spread it across their small kitchen table. "Will you help me study?" Dorothy Henderson had a 10th grade education. She had dropped out to help support her family during hard times and never had the chance to go back. She looked at the equations and problems before her, and they might as well have been written in a foreign language. But she sat down next to her grandson anyway. "Tell me what you know. Explain it to me. Sometimes teaching someone else helps you learn it better." For the next 4 hours, they sat together. Marcus worked through problems, explaining his process out loud while his grandmother listened, asked questions, and made sure he ate dinner. At 10 p.m., she finally sent him to bed, but Marcus couldn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling, thinking about Mr. Whitmore's words. "You don't belong here. You never will." But what Mr. Whitmore didn't know, what nobody at Prestwick Academy knew, was that Marcus Henderson had a secret. A secret that even he didn't fully understand, but one that had been with him his entire life. Marcus could see patterns where others saw chaos. Numbers spoke to him in a language that came as naturally as breathing. When he looked at a complex equation, the solution would simply appear in his mind, complete and whole, as if it had always been there waiting for him to notice it. His teachers at his previous school, an underfunded public school in a poor neighborhood, had recognized something special in him. They had pushed for his scholarship to Prestwick, believing that with the right resources and opportunities, Marcus could be anything he wanted to be. They hadn't counted on Mr. Whitmore. The next morning, Marcus arrived at school early. He found the library empty except for Mrs. Patterson, the elderly librarian who had always been kind to him. "My goodness, Marcus, you're here before the sun is properly up," she said with a warm smile. "Let me guess, Mr. Whitmore's special exam." Marcus looked up in surprise. "How did you know?" Mrs. Patterson's smile faded. "Oh, honey. You're not the first. Every few years, when a scholarship student shows promise, Gerald finds a way to push them out. He did it to Maria Gonzalez 3 years ago, to James Washington 5 years before that. He can't stand the idea that intelligence and potential aren't limited to children born with silver spoons in their mouths." "What happened to them? Maria and James?" "Maria goes to public school now. She's doing well, from what I hear, but she lost her confidence." "James." Mrs. Patterson sighed. "James stopped believing he was smart enough. Last I heard, he dropped out of high school entirely." Marcus felt something harden in his chest. "That's not going to be me." "No," Mrs. Patterson agreed, looking at him with respect. "I don't believe it will be. Now, let me show you where the advanced mathematics texts are. If Gerald Whitmore wants to test you at a university level, then we'll prepare you at a university level." For the next 2 weeks, Marcus lived in that library. He arrived before school started and stayed until Mrs. Patterson gently kicked him out in the evening. He worked through college textbooks, online lectures, and practice problems until the numbers danced behind his closed eyelids. His classmates noticed his absence from the cafeteria, from the common areas. Sarah Chin found him one afternoon, hunched over a textbook that was literally bigger than his head. Marcus, you're going to make yourself sick, she said, sitting down across from him uninvited. I'm fine, he muttered, not looking up. You're not fine. You've lost weight. You look exhausted. And for what? To prove something to a bitter old man who's already decided to hate you. Marcus finally looked up, and Sarah was startled by the intensity in his eyes. This isn't about proving something to him, Marcus said quietly. This is about proving something to myself. Every time someone like Mr. Whitmore tries to push me down, tries to tell me I don't belong, they're betting that I'll believe them. They're counting on me to accept their version of who I am and what I can do. If I give up now, if I let him win, then I'm telling every kid who looks like me and comes after me that they're right. That we should just accept our place and stop reaching for more. Sarah sat back, blinking. That's a lot of weight for an 11-year-old to carry. Yeah, Marcus agreed with a sad smile. But I didn't choose it. It was placed on me the day I walked into that classroom and Mr. Whitmore decided I was a problem that needed to be solved. Over the next week, something unexpected happened. Word spread about Marcus's situation, and it divided the school. Most students stayed silent, not wanting to get involved or risk Mr. Whitmore's wrath. But a few, like Sarah, and a boy named David Kim, and a girl named Aisha Johnson, began sneaking Marcus their notes, sharing study guides, and offering encouragement. My dad's an engineer, David said one afternoon, sliding a notebook across the library table to Marcus. These are his college notes on advanced calculus. He said you could borrow them. My mom's a mathematics professor, Aisha added. I told her what was happening, and she was furious. She said if you need help understanding anything, you can call her. Marcus felt something warm bloom in his chest. For months, he had felt isolated at Prestwick, like he was fighting a battle alone. But now, he saw that there were others who saw the injustice, who were willing to help even if they couldn't fully understand what it felt like to be in his position. The night before the exam, Marcus couldn't eat dinner. His grandmother sat with him at the kitchen table, holding his hand. Baby, I want you to know something, she said softly. No matter what happens tomorrow, I am proud of you. Not because of any test score or grade, but because of who you are. You're kind. You're hardworking. You stand up for what's right even when it costs you. Those are the things that matter. But what if I fail? Marcus whispered, voicing the fear that had been gnawing at him for weeks. What if he's right, and I'm not as smart as everyone thought? What if I really don't belong there? Dorothy Henderson cupped her grandson's face in her weathered hands. Listen to me. That school doesn't define your worth. That test doesn't define your intelligence. And that man's opinion doesn't define your future. You belong anywhere you have the courage to stand. You understand me? Marcus nodded, tears streaming down his face. Now, his grandmother continued, I want you to go to bed and get some rest. And tomorrow, you walk into that classroom with your head held high. You do your best, and you let God handle the rest. But neither Marcus nor his grandmother could sleep that night. At 2 a.m., Dorothy found Marcus at the kitchen table, working through problems by lamplight. Can't sleep, she asked gently. Every time I close my eyes, I see those equations, Marcus admitted. And I'm scared, Grandma. I'm scared that even after all this work, it won't be enough. Dorothy sat down beside him and did something she hadn't done in years. She began to sing. It was an old hymn, one her mother had sung to her, about storms and troubled waters and a God who never sleeps. As her voice filled their small kitchen, Marcus felt some of the tension leave his shoulders. When the song ended, his grandmother spoke again. You know, baby, your grandfather, God rest his soul, he used to say that courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about being terrified and doing the thing anyway. Tomorrow, you're going to be afraid. That's okay. But you're going to walk in there anyway, and you're going to show that man what you're made of. The morning of the exam arrived with gray skies and a cold wind. Marcus put on his best clothes, a button-up shirt his grandmother had pressed until it was crisp, pants that she had hemmed herself, and the one pair of dress shoes he owned that were getting a bit too small. "You look handsome," Dorothy said, straightening his collar. "Remember, head high, shoulders back. You're a Henderson, and we don't bow to anyone." The walk to school felt longer than usual. Each step brought Marcus closer to a moment that felt like it would define everything. When he arrived, he saw Mr. Whitmore waiting outside the classroom with a smile that made Marcus's blood run cold. "Good morning, Mr. Henderson. Are you ready for your examination?" "Yes, sir," Marcus replied, his voice steady despite the hammering of his heart. "Excellent. You'll be taking the test in the conference room, isolated, so there can be no question of impropriety. I'll be proctoring personally." "Of course you will," Marcus thought. "You want to watch me fail." The conference room was stark and cold. A single desk sat in the center, with the exam already placed on it. 20 questions. 2 hours. Marcus's entire future at Prestwick Academy, and possibly his entire educational trajectory, rested on these pages. Mr. Whitmore settled into a chair in the corner, arms crossed, watching Marcus like a hawk. "You may begin." Marcus picked up his pencil and read the first question. It was about eigenvectors and eigenvalues, concepts he had taught himself over the past 2 weeks. His hand shook slightly as he began to write. The first question took him 12 minutes. The second, 15. By the time he reached the fifth question, Marcus could feel sweat beading on his forehead. These weren't just difficult questions, they were deliberately obscure, pulling from the most complex corners of advanced mathematics. An hour passed. Then 90 minutes. Marcus was on question 17, his brain feeling like it might explode from the mental strain. He could feel Mr. Whitmore's eyes on him, could sense the man's satisfaction as Marcus struggled. But then something clicked. Marcus looked at question 18, a complex proof involving number theory, and suddenly saw it. Not just the answer, but the elegant logic behind it, the way all the pieces fit together like a beautiful puzzle. His pencil began to move faster. The transformation was remarkable. As Marcus worked through the final questions, his confidence grew. The numbers and equations that had seemed like impenetrable barriers now revealed themselves as challenges he could overcome. His grandmother's words echoed in his mind, "You belong anywhere you have the courage to stand." With 15 minutes remaining, Marcus completed the final question. He sat back, reviewing his work with the methodical precision that Mrs. Patterson had taught him. "Check your work twice," she had said. "Slow down and make sure." He found 2 small errors, simple arithmetic mistakes born from stress, and corrected them. When he finally set down his pencil with 5 minutes to spare, he looked up to find Mr. Whitmore staring at him with an expression that bordered on disbelief. "I'm finished, sir," Marcus said quietly. Mr. Whitmore's face reddened. "You couldn't have possibly completed this examination properly in 2 hours. Graduate students struggle with some of these questions. Would you like me to explain my reasoning for any of the answers?" Marcus offered, his voice calm despite the anger simmering beneath the surface. The teacher snatched up the exam papers, his hands trembling slightly as he flipped through them. His eyes darted across Marcus's neat handwriting, the carefully constructed proofs, the precise calculations. With each page, his frown deepened. "I'll need to grade this thoroughly," he finally said, his voice tight. "Come back after school tomorrow for the results." "Why can't you grade it now?" Marcus asked. "The answers are either right or wrong. You're a mathematics teacher, you should be able to verify them immediately." "Are you questioning my professional judgment, Mr. Henderson?" "I'm asking for fairness, Mr. Whitmore. You gave me this test to prove I don't belong here. The least you can do is grade it while I'm present so there's no question about the results." For a long moment, teacher and student stared at each other. Finally, Mr. Whitmore grabbed a red pen and began working through the exam, muttering under his breath. Marcus sat quietly, hands folded on the desk, waiting. Question 1, correct. Question 2, correct. Question 3, correct. As Mr. Whitmore progressed through the exam, his face grew progressively paler. His red pen hovered over papers that required no correction. Every answer was not just correct but elegantly solved, showing depth of understanding that went beyond mere memorization. When he reached question 15, a particularly nasty problem involving multivariable calculus that Mr. Whitmore had pulled from a graduate-level textbook, he stopped completely. Marcus had not only solved it correctly but had used a more efficient method than the one in the textbook's answer key. "Where did you learn this technique?" Mr. Whitmore demanded, jabbing his finger at the page. "I derived it myself," Marcus replied calmly. "The standard method works, but it's unnecessarily complicated. This approach gets to the same answer with fewer steps." Mr. Whitmore's hand was shaking now. He finished grading in silence. When he set down the red pen, not a single mark had been made on Marcus's paper except for a number at the top. 100%. "This is impossible," Mr. Whitmore whispered. "You must have cheated. Someone must have helped you." "You watched me the entire time," Marcus pointed out. "I had no materials except what you gave me. You selected every question. You controlled every aspect of this examination. If I cheated, then you failed as a proctor. I want you to retake it. Different questions. Right now." "No." The word hung in the air. Mr. Whitmore's eyes widened in shock. "Excuse me?" "No," Marcus repeated, standing up. "I'm not retaking anything. I did what you asked. I scored perfectly on an examination designed for graduate students. I proved that I belong in your classroom, though I shouldn't have had to prove anything. My previous test scores and assignments should have been enough." "You insolent, I'm not finished." Marcus's voice was quiet but firm. "For 6 months, you've tried to break me. You've humiliated me in front of my classmates, graded me unfairly, and questioned my integrity at every turn. But I'm still here. I'm still standing. And now I've done the impossible thing you demanded, and you still can't accept it." Mr. Whitmore stood up, his considerable bulk towering over the 11-year-old boy. "How dare you speak to me this way? I could have you expelled for insubordination." "Then do it," Marcus challenged. "But I'll make sure everyone knows why. I'll show them this test and my perfect score. I'll show them every test where you graded me differently than other students. I'll document every incident of discrimination. And we'll see what the school board has to say about it." The teacher's mouth opened and closed like a fish. "Get out of my sight." Marcus gathered his things and walked to the door. Before leaving, he turned back. "You know what's sad, Mr. Whitmore? You're a mathematics teacher. Mathematics doesn't care about race or background or zip codes. Numbers are the most objective, fair, and unbiased things in the world. 2 + 2 = 4 whether you're rich or poor, black or white. But you took this beautiful, pure subject and poisoned it with your prejudice. You could have been a mentor to me. Instead, you chose to be an obstacle. I feel sorry for you." Marcus left the room, letting the door close softly behind him. His legs were shaking, and he had to lean against the wall for a moment to catch his breath. He had just spoken to a teacher, a respected, senior teacher at a prestigious academy, with a boldness he didn't know he possessed. But he didn't regret it. Not one word. He made his way to the library, where Mrs. Patterson was waiting anxiously. "Well?" she asked. "I got every question right," Marcus said, and suddenly he was crying, "Great," eating sobs of relief and exhaustion and lingering fear. Mrs. Patterson pulled him into a hug, this proper elderly librarian embracing a crying child in the middle of her pristine library. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered. "So very proud." That evening, Marcus told his grandmother everything, the perfect score, the confrontation, the threat of expulsion. Dorothy listened carefully, her expression grave. Baby, you did the right thing standing up for yourself. But you need to understand, men like Gerald Whitmore don't accept defeat gracefully. He's going to come after you harder now. I know, Marcus said. But I'm not afraid anymore, Grandma. Or maybe I am afraid, but I'm going to keep going anyway. His grandmother smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. The next morning, Marcus arrived at school to find an unusual scene. A crowd of students had gathered outside the principal's office, whispering and pointing. Sarah Chen spotted Marcus and rushed over. Marcus. Did you know about this? Know about what? Mr. Whitmore is being investigated. Someone filed a formal complaint with the school board about discriminatory grading practices and harassment of minority students. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Who filed the complaint? No one knows. It's anonymous. But apparently, they submitted detailed documentation, grade comparisons, test scores, witness statements. The board took it seriously enough to launch an immediate investigation. Marcus's mind raced. He hadn't filed anything. His grandmother had promised not to interfere without his permission. So who? He found out later that day when Mrs. Patterson called him to the library. Sitting at a table were 3 people he'd never seen before, 2 women and 1 man, all impeccably dressed in business attire. Marcus, Mrs. Patterson said gently, these people would like to speak with you. They're from the school board's Office of Equity and Inclusion. The older woman smiled warmly. Hello, Marcus. My name is Dr. Evelyn Brooks. This is Dr. James Morrison and attorney Linda Chen. We're here because we've received some concerning allegations about your treatment at this school, and we'd like to hear your side of the story. Marcus looked at Mrs. Patterson, who nodded encouragingly. It's okay, honey. Tell them the truth. For the next 2 hours, Marcus recounted everything. The constant scrutiny, the unfair grading, the public humiliations, and finally, the impossible examination. Dr. Brooks took notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions. Dr. Morrison's expression grew increasingly troubled, and Attorney Chen's jaw tightened with each new revelation. Do you still have the examination Mr. Whitmore gave you? Dr. Brooks asked. Yes, ma'am. He gave it back to me yesterday. Marcus pulled out the paper, and the 3 board members examined it carefully. My God, Dr. Morrison breathed. These are doctoral-level questions. Some of these problems are used in qualifying exams for PhD candidates in mathematics. And you answered them all correctly? Attorney Chen asked, her tone gentle. Yes, ma'am. In 2 hours? Yes, ma'am. The 3 exchanged meaningful looks. Dr. Brooks leaned forward. Marcus, I want you to know that what Mr. Whitmore did to you was wrong. Profoundly wrong. No student should ever be subjected to this kind of treatment. We're going to make sure this never happens to another child at this school. What's going to happen to Mr. Whitmore? Marcus asked quietly. That's not something we can discuss with you right now, Attorney Chen said. But I can tell you that we take these allegations very seriously, and there will be consequences. Over the next week, Prestwick Academy was in turmoil. Mr. Whitmore was placed on immediate administrative leave pending the investigation. The school board brought in independent experts to review his grading practices over the past 5 years. What they found was damning. Mr. Whitmore had systematically discriminated against minority students, grading them more harshly than their white peers even when their work was identical. Several scholarship students had been forced out of his classes over the years, their confidence shattered and their academic trajectories derailed. The pattern was undeniable and well documented. But the story didn't end there. As news of the investigation spread, something unexpected happened. Former students began coming forward with their own stories of Mr. Whitmore's discrimination. Maria Gonzalez, the scholarship student Mrs. Patterson had mentioned, submitted a detailed account of her experiences. James Washington, who had dropped out of high school, recorded a video testimony that went viral on social media. The media picked up the story. Prestigious academy faces discrimination scandal, read one headline. Mathematics teacher accused of systematic racism, declared another. Suddenly, Prestwick Academy, which had prided itself on being an elite institution above reproach, was facing intense public scrutiny. Marcus became the reluctant face of the scandal. Reporters wanted interviews. Parents demanded meetings. Other students at the school began treating him differently, some with newfound respect, others with resentment for bringing negative attention to their beloved academy. Through it all, Marcus tried to maintain normalcy. He attended his classes, did his homework, and kept his head down. But normalcy was impossible. He was assigned a different mathematics teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, who welcomed him warmly and assured him that she would grade him fairly. "I want you to know something, Marcus," Mrs. Rodriguez said during their first class. "I've reviewed your academic record, and I'm honestly amazed by your abilities. You have a gift for mathematics, a genuine, extraordinary gift. I'm going to challenge you, yes, but fairly. And I'm going to help you reach your full potential." For the first time in months, Marcus felt something like hope. But the real turning point came 3 weeks after the investigation began. Marcus was called to the principal's office, where he found his grandmother waiting, looking anxious. "What's wrong?" he asked immediately. "Nothing's wrong, baby," she assured him, squeezing his hand. "Just wait." Principal Anderson, a stern woman who had always seemed distant and unapproachable, sat behind her desk with an unusual expression on her face. When Dr. Brooks and Dr. Morrison entered, Marcus understood that something important was about to happen. "Marcus," Principal Anderson began, "the investigation into Mr. Whitmore's conduct has concluded. Based on overwhelming evidence of discriminatory practices and professional misconduct, he has been terminated from his position at Prestwick Academy effective immediately." Marcus felt a complex mix of emotions, relief, vindication, but also a strange sadness. He hadn't wanted to destroy anyone's career. He had just wanted to be treated fairly. However, Principal Anderson continued, her voice softening slightly, "The investigation revealed something else. Something that requires a different kind of conversation." She opened a folder on her desk and pulled out several documents. Marcus recognized them. They were his test scores, not just from Mr. Whitmore's class but from every assessment he had taken since arriving at Prestwick Academy. "Marcus," Dr. Morrison said gently, "when we reviewed your academic records to document Mr. Whitmore's discriminatory grading, we noticed something remarkable. Even with his unfair grading practices working against you, your scores are extraordinary. So we had educational psychologists review your work and administer a series of tests." Marcus's grandmother squeezed his hand tighter. "Marcus," Dr. Brooks said, smiling, "you're what we call profoundly gifted. Your cognitive abilities, particularly in mathematical and logical reasoning, are in the 99.9th percentile. To put it simply, you have the intellectual capacity of someone 2 to 3 times your age." The room spun slightly. Marcus had always known he was good at math, but this was something else entirely. "What does that mean?" his grandmother asked, her voice trembling. "It means," Principal Anderson said, and for the first time, Marcus saw respect in her eyes, "that Marcus has been significantly underserved by our curriculum. Even our advanced classes aren't challenging enough for him. We've been discussing options with the school board, and we'd like to propose something unusual." Dr. Morrison leaned forward. "Marcus, how would you feel about taking college-level mathematics courses? We've reached out to the state university, and they're willing to allow you to enroll in their program while still attending Prestwick for your other subjects. You would be the youngest student in the program's history." Marcus couldn't speak. He looked at his grandmother, whose eyes were brimming with tears. "There's more," Attorney Chen added. "As part of the school's settlement regarding the discrimination you experienced, they're prepared to offer a significant educational trust fund. Enough to ensure that money will never be a barrier to your education, not for high school, not for college, not for graduate school if you choose to pursue it. I don't understand, Dorothy Henderson said, her voice breaking. Why are you doing this? Is this just because you're afraid we'll sue? Principal Anderson had the grace to look ashamed. Mrs. Henderson, I'll be honest with you. Yes, the legal implications of what happened here are significant. But that's not the only reason. The truth is, we failed your grandson. We allowed a teacher's prejudice to nearly destroy a remarkable young mind. We can't undo that, but we can try to make it right. What about the other students? Marcus spoke up suddenly. Maria Gonzalez, James Washington, all the others that Mr. Whitmore pushed out. What about them? The adults exchanged glances. Marcus, Dr. Brooks said gently, we can't force those students to return or accept assistance. But we are reaching out to each of them with formal apologies and offers of support, whether that's financial assistance, tutoring, counseling, or help getting back on track academically. It's not enough, Marcus said firmly. They lost years. They lost confidence. Some of them stopped believing in themselves. Money and apologies won't fix that. You're absolutely right, Principal Anderson acknowledged. It's not enough. Nothing we do will be enough. But it's a start. And going forward, we're implementing new policies to ensure this never happens again. Mandatory bias training for all faculty. An anonymous reporting system for students who experience discrimination. Regular audits of grading practices. A commitment to recruiting and retaining more diverse faculty. Marcus looked at his grandmother. She nodded slowly. Baby, this is your decision. Whatever you want to do, I'll support you. Marcus thought about Mr. Whitmore's words, you don't belong here. You never will. He thought about Maria and James and all the others who had been made to feel the same way. He thought about future students who might face similar treatment. I'll accept the university program, he said finally. And the trust fund, but I want some of it used to create scholarships for other students like me. Students who are smart and hardworking but need help getting through doors that keep getting closed in their faces. That's a very mature and generous suggestion, Dr. Morrison said, clearly impressed. And I want to meet with Mr. Whitmore, Marcus added. The room fell silent. Absolutely not, his grandmother said immediately. That man doesn't deserve another moment of your time. I need to do this, Grandma, Marcus insisted. Not for him, for me. I need him to understand what he did, what it meant, what it cost. If I don't, I'll always wonder if he ever truly understood the weight of his actions. Attorney Chin shook her head. Marcus, Mr. Whitmore is no longer employed here. We can't force him to meet with you. Then ask him. Tell him I want 5 minutes. That's all. The adults looked at each other uncertainly. Finally, Principal Anderson nodded. I'll reach out to him. But Marcus, you should prepare yourself for the possibility that he'll refuse. 2 days later, Marcus received word that Gerald Whitmore had agreed to meet. It would be at the school, in the principal's office, with his grandmother and Principal Anderson present. The meeting was scheduled for 4 p.m. on a Friday. Marcus barely ate lunch that day, his stomach churning with nervousness. Sarah and his other friends tried to convince him to cancel. Why put yourself through this? Sarah asked. He doesn't deserve your forgiveness. I'm not going to forgive him, Marcus said quietly. But I need to understand him. And I need him to see me, really see me, not as a problem or a threat or a charity case, but as a person he hurt. When 4 p.m. arrived, Marcus walked into the principal's office with his head held high and his shoulders back, a Henderson, who didn't bow to anyone. Mr. Whitmore was already there, looking smaller somehow without his position and authority. Gerald Whitmore looked like he had aged a decade in the weeks since Marcus had last seen him. His face was drawn, with dark circles under his eyes. His usually carefully groomed appearance was disheveled, shirt wrinkled, hair uncombed. When Marcus entered the room, the former teacher flinched slightly, as if expecting an attack. Mr. Whitmore, Marcus said evenly, taking a seat across from him. His grandmother stood protectively behind him, one hand on his shoulder. Principal Anderson sat at her desk, observing but silent. "Marcus," Mr. Whitmore said hoarsely. He couldn't seem to meet the boy's eyes. Your principal said you wanted to speak with me." "I did. I do." Marcus took a deep breath. "I need to understand something. Why? Why did you hate me so much? What did I ever do to you?" For a long moment, Mr. Whitmore said nothing. His hands trembled in his lap. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "You didn't do anything. That's the truth. You didn't do anything except exist in a way that challenged everything I believed about the world." "What does that mean?" Marcus demanded, his composure cracking slightly. "I was just a kid trying to learn. I was respectful, I worked hard, I never caused problems. So what was it about my existence that threatened you so much?" Mr. Whitmore's face crumpled. "I grew up believing certain things. My father believed them, my grandfather believed them. I was taught that there was a natural order to the world, that some people were simply better suited for certain things than others. Intelligence, leadership, success, these were traits that belonged to people who looked like me, who came from families like mine." Marcus felt his grandmother's hand tighten on his shoulder, but he remained still, listening. "And then you walked into my classroom," Mr. Whitmore continued, tears streaming down his face now. "This scholarship kid from the wrong side of town, wearing clothes that didn't quite fit, carrying a worn-out backpack. You were exactly the kind of student I had learned to dismiss, to underestimate, to push aside. But then you started answering questions. Complex questions. Questions that challenged even my best students. And you did it effortlessly." He finally looked up at Marcus, and the boy saw something in the teacher's eyes that he hadn't expected, genuine pain. "Every time you succeeded, it was like a hammer striking the foundation of everything I thought I knew. If you could be brilliant, and you are brilliant, Marcus, profoundly so, then what did that say about everything I had been taught? What did it say about the worldview I had built my entire life around? So I tried to break you. I tried to prove that you were an exception, an anomaly, a fluke. I tried to make you fail so I could restore my comfortable worldview where people like you didn't threaten people like me." The room was silent except for Mr. Whitmore's quiet sobbing. "But you know what the real tragedy is?" he continued. "You weren't the first. Over 30 years of teaching, how many brilliant minds did I dismiss? How many students did I fail because they didn't fit my narrow definition of what intelligence should look like? How many lives did I damage because I was too cowardly to question the prejudices I inherited?" Marcus felt something shift inside him. He had expected to feel anger, vindication, maybe even satisfaction at seeing his tormentor brought low. Instead, he felt a profound sadness, for Mr. Whitmore, yes, but also for all the students who had come before him, all the potential that had been wasted because of one man's inability to see past his own biases. "You hurt me," Marcus said quietly. "You made me doubt myself. There were nights I cried because of what you said to me, days I didn't want to go to school because I knew you'd be there, waiting to humiliate me in front of my classmates. You made me feel small and worthless and like maybe I really didn't belong anywhere except the place people like you wanted to keep me." "I know," Mr. Whitmore whispered. "God help me, I know. And I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, I know it doesn't undo the damage, but I am truly, deeply sorry." "Why should I believe you?" Marcus challenged. "How do I know this isn't just you being sorry that you got caught, sorry that you lost your job, sorry that your reputation is destroyed? How do I know you actually understand what you did wrong?" Mr. Whitmore was silent for a long moment. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a worn photograph. He slid it across the desk to Marcus. "That's my daughter," he said quietly. "Hannah. She's 27 now, lives in California. She hasn't spoken to me in 4 years." Marcus looked at the photo. It showed a young woman with Mr. Whitmore's eyes, standing with her arm around another woman, both of them smiling. Hannah is gay, Mr. Whitmore continued. When she came out to me, I rejected her. Told her she was confused, that she was throwing away her future, that she was choosing a lifestyle that would bring shame to our family. All the same prejudiced garbage my father had fed me, I fed to my own daughter. And I lost her because of it. He wiped his eyes with a shaking hand. For 4 years, I've been trying to understand where I went wrong. I started reading, learning, questioning the beliefs I had accepted without examination my entire life. I started seeing patterns in my own behavior, the way I treated students who were different, the way I dismissed ideas that challenged my worldview. And then you came along, Marcus, and you held up a mirror to the ugliest parts of myself. So I'm supposed to feel sorry for you? Marcus asked, his voice hard. You lost your daughter because of your bigotry, and now you're trying to make me feel bad for exposing your racism? No. Mr. Whitmore said quickly. No, that's not what I'm saying. You should never feel sorry for me. What I did to you, what I did to Hannah, what I did to countless students over the years, those are my sins to bear. I'm telling you this because you asked me if I truly understand what I did wrong. And the answer is, I'm beginning to. Finally, after all these years, I'm beginning to see the damage that prejudice causes, not just to its victims, but to everyone it touches. Dorothy Henderson spoke for the first time, her voice cold. Mr. Whitmore, my grandson didn't come here to give you absolution. He's 11 years old. He shouldn't have to carry your guilt on top of everything else you've put on his shoulders. You're absolutely right, Mrs. Henderson, Mr. Whitmore agreed. And I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm just trying to answer Marcus's question honestly. He asked me why, and I'm telling him, because I was a coward who chose comfortable prejudice over uncomfortable truth. Marcus stood up slowly. Thank you for being honest, Marcus said to Mr. Whitmore. I don't forgive you. Maybe someday I will, but not today. Today, I'm still angry and hurt. But I hope you mean what you say about learning and changing. Not for me, I don't need anything from you. But for all the other students out there who deserve better than what you gave me. He turned to leave, then paused. Mr. Whitmore, if you really want to make amends, don't do it with me. Do it with Maria Gonzalez and James Washington and all the others whose names you probably don't even remember. Do it by becoming the kind of person who fights against prejudice instead of perpetuating it. That's how you make this right, not by apologizing to me, but by making sure no other kid has to go through what I did. Marcus walked out of the office with his head held high, his grandmother following close behind. As they left the school building, Dorothy pulled him into a tight embrace. I'm so proud of you, she whispered. So incredibly proud. Did I do the right thing? Marcus asked. Meeting with him? Yes, baby. You gave him something he didn't deserve but desperately needed, honesty and a path forward. Whether he takes it is up to him. But you faced your fear and spoke your truth. That takes courage most adults don't have. The next few months brought tremendous changes to Marcus's life. True to their word, Prestwick Academy arranged for him to enroll in advanced mathematics courses at the State University. 3 times a week, Marcus left school early to attend lectures with students 10 years older than him. At first, the university students didn't know what to make of this 11-year-old in their advanced calculus class. Some were skeptical, others were amused. But Marcus quickly proved himself. He asked insightful questions, offered elegant solutions to complex problems, and demonstrated a depth of mathematical intuition that impressed even the professors. Dr. Sarah Chen, no relation to his friend Sarah, was his primary mathematics professor, and she took a special interest in Marcus's development. You have something rare, she told him after class one day. Not just intelligence, plenty of people are intelligent. You have mathematical intuition. You can see patterns and connections that others miss. That's a gift that can't be taught. It has to be nurtured. Under her mentorship, Marcus began to truly flourish. He wasn't just learning mathematics, he was beginning to create it. In his second semester at the university, he co-authored a paper with Dr. Chen on number theory that was published in a peer-reviewed journal. At 12 years old, Marcus Henderson became one of the youngest published mathematicians in the country. The media attention that followed was intense. News outlets wanted to tell the story of the young genius who had overcome discrimination to achieve remarkable success. But Marcus insisted on telling the complete story, including the parts about Maria, James, and the other students who hadn't had his opportunities. "I'm not special because I'm smart," Marcus told one interviewer. "Lots of kids are smart. I'm lucky because people finally started listening to me, believing in me, and giving me chances. But there are hundreds, maybe thousands of kids just as talented as me who never get those chances. That's what we should be talking about, not just my success, but all the potential talent we're wasting because of prejudice and inequality." The interview went viral. Marcus's words sparked a national conversation about bias in education, about how brilliant students from marginalized communities are systematically overlooked and underserved. Schools across the country began implementing reforms similar to those Prestwick had adopted. But the most profound changes were happening at Prestwick itself. With the trust fund Marcus had helped establish, the school created a new scholarship program specifically designed to recruit and support talented students from underprivileged backgrounds. Mrs. Rodriguez, Marcus's new mathematics teacher, spearheaded a mentorship program pairing scholarship students with faculty members to ensure they had advocates and support systems. Maria Gonzalez was one of the first students to benefit from these changes. She returned to Prestwick, older and wiser, and this time she thrived. She and Marcus became friends, bonding over their shared experiences and their determination to make sure other students didn't suffer as they had. "You know what's funny?" Maria said to Marcus one afternoon as they studied together in the library. "When Whitmore pushed me out, I thought it meant I wasn't good enough. I spent years believing I was the problem. But it was never about us, was it? It was always about him and people like him being afraid of what we represent." "What do we represent?" Marcus asked. Maria smiled. "Change. Progress. The end of their comfortable world where they get to decide who's smart enough, who's good enough, who belongs. We're proof that talent and intelligence don't look the way they've always imagined." As for Mr. Whitmore, Marcus heard through Principal Anderson that the former teacher had started volunteering at a community center in a low-income neighborhood, tutoring students in mathematics for free. He had also begun speaking at education conferences about his own prejudices and the harm they caused, using his story as a cautionary tale. Marcus wasn't sure how he felt about that. Part of him was glad that Mr. Whitmore seemed to be genuinely trying to change. Another part of him felt that no amount of good work could undo the damage the teacher had caused over 3 decades. "Can people really change?" he asked his grandmother one evening. Dorothy considered the question carefully. "Some people can," she said finally. "Some people, when confronted with the truth about themselves, have the courage to look in the mirror and change what they see. Others just learn to hide it better. Time will tell which kind Mr. Whitmore is." On Marcus's 12th birthday, something unexpected arrived in the mail, a letter from Mr. Whitmore. Marcus almost threw it away without reading it, but his grandmother encouraged him to at least see what it said. The letter was short. "Marcus, I won't pretend we'll ever be friends or that you should ever trust me. But I wanted you to know that I've been working with former students I wronged, Maria, James, and 11 others I've been able to track down. I'm helping them prepare for college entrance exams, writing letters of recommendation, and doing whatever I can to support their educational goals. I also wanted you to know that my daughter Hannah and I are speaking again. She read about what happened with you in the news, and she reached out. We have a long way to go, but we're talking. She told me that sometimes the hardest truths come from the most unexpected sources, in her case, from an 11-year-old boy who had every right to hate me but chose honesty instead. You changed my life, Marcus. Not because you tried to, but because you held up a mirror and forced me to see what I had become. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of that gift. I don't ask for your forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that your courage had ripples you may never fully see. With respect and remorse, Gerald Whitmore. Marcus read the letter twice, then folded it carefully. As Marcus entered his teenage years, his reputation in the mathematics community continued to grow. He published 3 more papers, won several prestigious awards, and was invited to present at conferences around the world. Universities were already reaching out, offering full scholarships for when he was ready for undergraduate work. But success brought its own challenges. Some people couldn't accept that a young black teenager could be genuinely brilliant. He faced accusations of fraud, suggestions that his professors were doing his work for him, and racist comments on social media that his grandmother tried to shield him from but couldn't always prevent. They said I'm only successful because of affirmative action, Marcus told Dr. Chen after reading particularly vicious comments online. They said universities are just using me for diversity points. Dr. Chen sighed heavily. Marcus, I'm going to tell you something that's going to sound harsh, but you need to hear it. No matter how many papers you publish, no matter how many awards you win, there will always be people who try to diminish your accomplishments. They can't accept that you've achieved things through merit, so they invent other explanations. You can't let them define you. But how do I fight it? How do I prove them wrong? You don't, Dr. Chen said firmly. You're not required to prove your worth to people who've already decided you're worthless. You just keep doing excellent work, keep pushing boundaries, keep being brilliant. Let your work speak for itself. The people who matter will see your talent. The ones who don't aren't worth your energy. It was advice that Marcus would return to many times over the years. Meanwhile, the scholarship program at Prestwick was flourishing. The first cohort of students selected under the new criteria were excelling, proving that when given genuine opportunities and support, talent could be found everywhere. The program became a model for other schools, and Marcus was often invited to speak about his experiences. At 14, Marcus gave a TED Talk titled The Mathematics of Belonging. He spoke about patterns and equations, but also about the human cost of prejudice and the importance of creating systems that recognize talent wherever it exists. In mathematics, he said to the audience, we trust in universal truths. The Pythagorean theorem works the same way whether you're in a mansion or a mobile home. It doesn't care about your skin color or your zip code or how much money your parents make. Mathematics is beautiful because it's objective and fair. But the systems we've built around mathematics, our schools, our testing, our opportunities, those aren't objective or fair at all. We've taken the purest, most unbiased subject in the world and filtered it through our biases. And in doing so, we've lost countless brilliant minds who could have advanced human knowledge but were never given the chance. The talk went viral, viewed millions of times. Marcus's phone number and email were suddenly in demand from journalists, educators, and policymakers. His grandmother had to hire a manager just to help sort through all the requests for his time and attention. This is getting overwhelming, Marcus admitted to his grandmother one evening. Sometimes I just want to be a normal kid, you know. I want to play video games and hang out with friends and not think about being a symbol or a spokesman or whatever it is I've become. Then be a normal kid, Dorothy said simply. You don't owe the world your entire childhood. You've already done more than most adults to make things better. It's okay to just be 14 sometimes. So Marcus did. He joined the school chess club, not because he wanted to prove anything but because he enjoyed it. He learned to play guitar, badly but enthusiastically. He went to movies with Sarah and his other friends and tried to maintain some semblance of normal teenage life. But normalcy was fleeting. When Marcus was 15, he received an invitation that would change everything again. MIT wanted him to start their undergraduate program early, as part of a special cohort for exceptionally gifted students. You don't have to decide right away, his grandmother said when the invitation arrived. You could finish high school first, take your time. But Marcus knew what he wanted. Grandma, I'm ready. I've been taking college courses for years now. Staying in high school at this point is just marking time. I want to be challenged. I want to be around people who love mathematics as much as I do. Dorothy Henderson looked at her 15-year-old grandson, who somehow seemed both impossibly young and incredibly old at the same time. "When did you grow up so much?" she asked, tears in her eyes. "I had a good teacher," Marcus said, hugging her. The decision to leave for MIT early meant leaving Prestwick Academy before graduation. The school organized a special ceremony to honor Marcus and the other scholarship students who had excelled in the program he had helped create. Principal Anderson, who had undergone her own transformation in the years since the Whitmore scandal, gave a speech that was surprisingly emotional. "When Marcus Henderson first walked through our doors," she said, "we failed him. We allowed prejudice to flourish in our halls. We turned a blind eye to discrimination. We nearly drove away one of the most brilliant minds I've ever encountered. But Marcus didn't let us break him. Instead, he broke us, broke our comfortable assumptions, our unconscious biases, our willingness to accept the status quo. And in breaking us, he made us better." She looked directly at Marcus. "You taught this institution more than we ever taught you. You showed us that excellence has no color, that intelligence knows no zip code, and that the purpose of education isn't to maintain hierarchies but to dismantle them. Thank you, Marcus, for your courage, your brilliance, and your grace. We're better because you were here." The auditorium erupted in applause. Marcus looked out at the crowd and saw familiar faces: Mrs. Patterson, Mrs. Rodriguez, Sarah and David and Aisha and so many others who had supported him. He also saw the faces of the new scholarship students, kids who looked like him, who came from neighborhoods like his, who were getting opportunities they might not have had before. In the back row, almost hidden, sat Maria Gonzalez and James Washington, both of whom had returned to education and were now thriving. They gave him subtle nods of recognition and respect. As Marcus walked across the stage to receive his special honors diploma, he thought about the scared 11-year-old who had first entered this building, who had been told he didn't belong, who had been tested beyond reason and pushed toward failure. He thought about that boy's grandmother, working 3 jobs to give him opportunities she never had. He thought about Mrs. Patterson, quietly documenting discrimination when she could have stayed silent. He thought about Mr. Whitmore, whose cruelty had paradoxically opened doors by forcing the system to confront its own failures. And he thought about all the students who would come after him, who would benefit from the changes that had been made, who would never know the name of the boy whose suffering had helped pave their way. That was okay. Marcus wasn't doing this for recognition. He was doing it because it was right, because it was necessary, because someone had to. At MIT, Marcus found himself in an environment completely different from anything he had experienced before. Here, being brilliant wasn't unusual, it was expected. For the first time in his life, Marcus was surrounded by peers who could match him intellectually, who challenged him, who pushed him to think in new ways. He thrived. By 17, he had completed his undergraduate degree in mathematics with highest honors. By 19, he had finished his PhD, becoming one of the youngest people in MIT's history to earn a doctorate in mathematics. His dissertation on number theory and cryptography was hailed as groundbreaking, opening up new avenues of research that would keep mathematicians busy for decades. But Marcus never forgot where he came from. Even as he achieved international recognition in his field, he maintained his connection to the community that had raised him. Every summer, he returned home to teach mathematics at a community center in his old neighborhood. He mentored scholarship students at Prestwick Academy. He advocated for educational reform at every opportunity. "You could be making millions in the private sector," a friend told him when Marcus accepted a position as a professor at a public university instead of lucrative offers from tech companies. "Why are you choosing to teach?" Marcus thought about Mr. Whitmore, about the damage one teacher can do, but also about the good that teachers like Mrs. Rodriguez and Dr. Chen had done in his life. "Because teaching matters," he said simply. "Because the next Marcus Henderson might be sitting in a classroom right now, being told they don't belong, being pushed toward failure by someone who can't see past their own prejudices. I want to be the teacher who sees them, who believes in them, who opens doors instead of closing them. On Marcus's 21st birthday, he received an unexpected visitor. Gerald Whitmore, now 79 years old and in failing health, asked to meet with him one more time. They met at a coffee shop near the university. Whitmore looked frail, his once imposing presence diminished by age and illness. But his eyes were clear, and when he spoke, his voice was steady. "I'm dying," he said without preamble. "Cancer. The doctors give me a few months at most." "I'm sorry to hear that," Marcus said, and found that he meant it. "Don't be. I've had more time than I deserved." Whitmore paused, collecting his thoughts. "Marcus, I asked to see you because I wanted you to know what your confrontation did for me, not just apologizing, but truly accounting for what I did. Over the past 10 years, I've worked with 43 students I had wronged during my teaching career. 43 brilliant minds I nearly destroyed. Every single one of them is doing well now, in college, in graduate school, starting careers. That's partly their own strength, but it's also because you forced me to face what I had done." Marcus listened quietly. "I've also been working with education departments around the country, helping them identify and address implicit bias in their programs. I've trained hundreds of teachers on recognizing their own prejudices and actively working against them. None of it erases what I did, but..." His voice broke. "But maybe it prevents someone else from doing the same damage." "Why are you telling me this?" Marcus asked gently. "Because you were right, that day in Principal Anderson's office. You told me that the way to make amends wasn't to apologize to you but to make sure no other kid had to go through what you did. I've tried to do that. And I wanted you to know, before I die, that your courage, your willingness to confront me, to demand better, it changed more lives than just your own." Marcus felt tears prick his eyes. "Mr. Whitmore, I can't give you absolution. I still carry scars from what you did to me. There are still moments when I doubt myself, when I hear your voice telling me I don't belong." "I know," Whitmore said quietly. "And I'll carry that guilt to my grave. But Marcus, please hear this, you do belong. You belong everywhere you have the courage to stand. You prove that beyond any doubt. And every student who benefits from the changes we've made, every one of them owes a debt to your strength and your refusal to be broken." They talked for another hour, not about forgiveness or redemption, but about mathematics, about education, about the responsibility that comes with the power to shape young minds. When they parted, Marcus shook the old teacher's hand. "Thank you for being honest," Marcus said. "For trying to do better. That matters." "Thank you," Whitmore replied, "for being braver than I ever was." 6 weeks later, Marcus received word that Gerald Whitmore had passed away. In his will, he had left a substantial donation to the scholarship fund at Prestwick Academy, money that would support students for generations to come. Marcus attended the funeral, standing in the back of the small gathering. He listened to Whitmore's daughter Hannah speak about her father's transformation, about how confronting his prejudices had allowed them to rebuild their relationship in his final years. He heard former students speak about the man who had helped them get back on track after nearly derailing their education. It was complicated. The man in the casket had caused tremendous harm, had damaged young lives, had perpetuated injustice. But he had also, in his final years, tried to make amends. He had used his remaining time to undo some of the damage he had caused. Was that enough? Could it ever be enough? Marcus didn't know. But he knew that people were complicated, that redemption was possible even for those who had done terrible things, and that change, real, meaningful change, could happen when people had the courage to confront uncomfortable truths. As Marcus left the funeral, he received a text from Maria Gonzalez, who was now in graduate school studying educational policy. "Did you hear? The state just passed a law requiring implicit bias training for all public school teachers. They're calling it the Henderson-Gonzalez Education Equity Act." Marcus stared at his phone, overwhelmed. A law. Named after him and Maria. ensuring that what happened to them would be less likely to happen to others. He thought about the terrified 11-year-old who had walked into Mr. Whitmore's classroom, who had been tested unfairly, who had been told he didn't belong. That boy could never have imagined this moment, couldn't have conceived that his suffering would lead to systemic change, that his courage would inspire legislation, that his story would touch thousands of lives. But God had existed for that poor and helpless child. Not in the form of divine intervention or miracles, but in the strength to keep standing when everyone wanted him to fall. In the people who saw his worth when others saw only his color. In the opportunity to transform pain into purpose, injustice into advocacy, suffering into change. Marcus Henderson wasn't just a mathematician anymore. He was a symbol of what was possible when talent was recognized regardless of where it came from. He was proof that the arc of the moral universe, though long, does bend toward justice, but only when people have the courage to pull it in that direction. And though he would carry scars from his experiences forever, he also carried something else, the knowledge that his story had mattered, that his struggle had meaning, and that the doors he had forced open would remain open for those who came after him. That was enough. That was more than enough. That was everything. Dear friend, as Marcus's story shows us, every child deserves the chance to reach their full potential, regardless of their background, their zip code, or the color of their skin. But that won't happen automatically. It requires all of us, teachers, parents, community members, to actively challenge our biases, to question our assumptions, and to open doors instead of closing them. The next Marcus Henderson might be sitting in a classroom right now, waiting for someone to see their brilliance. They might be struggling against a system that wasn't built for them. They might be one test, one cruel word, one closed door away from giving up on their dreams. Don't let that happen. Speak up when you see injustice. Support programs that give opportunities to underserved students. Believe in potential wherever you find it. Because talent is universal, but opportunity is not. If this story touched your heart and opened your eyes, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Share it with educators, parents, and anyone who needs to hear this message. Together, we can create a world where every child knows they belong, where brilliance is recognized in all its forms, and where no student is ever told they're not good enough simply because of who they are. Let's build that world together. Subscribe now, and be part of the change.